Hey everyone, and welcome to this new video, Mastermind role for beginners. There's already an old version of this, but this is a new one because some things have changed, which is now you do have Mastermind options, which gives you always a little bit spice, a little bit of variety to your Mastermind role. So we're gonna address those Mastermind options I personally think you should play as a beginner or that are useful to be played. I'm gonna tell you what's the general idea of picking a Mastermind role, especially if you're a beginner, and I will point out the good and bad features about every of those Mastermind options. First of all, if you play the game for the first time or the Mastermind for the first time, you will have Lock and Fight as your default choice. You can get the others in the shop. I will show you now how you do this. In order to unlock more Mastermind options, go to the shop in the menu, then pick Playstyles, and you will see here are the Greed option, the Redraw option, and the YOLO option you can buy with Essence, which is this brownish orange currency at the top. You will earn playing the campaign, the weekly challenges, the tutorial, or just classic games or AI games. So just play a lot and you will unlock Essence you can buy your Mastermind options with. Personally, I think the YOLO option is nothing you should learn, especially not if you're a beginner. So we will have a look at the Redraw, the Lock and Fighter, and the Greed as your choices of Mastermind. One thing all those have in common is as soon as you pick it, you will have a selection of 10 fighters shown to you. Those 10 fighters serve special requirements. For example, there's always at least one guaranteed tier 1 unit, or you will always have an arcane unit, for example here the Steed, and you will always have a magic damage unit, again the Steed. There's some more requirements that will get solved with your Mastermind role, but it's not really important now for you to know. What are the tips and tricks I can give you in general to pick this role now? First of all, always try out all the legions before you start with Mastermind. This is all about getting to know the units. Nothing is worse than starting a game and you actually don't know the units and have to read through the description because you only have limited time to pick your role. So get familiar with the units, play AI games, play the campaign with legions, or just play them in the classic queue. But play at least each legion 3 times, get to know the units, get to know their strengths, their weaknesses, and especially the comms that might be either within a legion or that you can already imagine between units that are from different legions. Trick number 2 is always pick a tier 1 unit. Those are the cheapest units in each legion and they will give you a lot of benefits. One of them is you will always have a unit to build with some small spare gold. For example here our Proton only costs us 20 gold and you should almost always be able to fit one in if you have some gold left over. Another thing is you can properly split and manipulate the wave with them. This is another topic, but there's a video guide about this as well and there's going to be a new version of this very soon. So the tier 1 fighters solve those 2 positive points and they will just give you a way smoother price range of your units. And you will just be able to always choose the right unit you need to build, which is giving you a lot of good potential to hold almost any wave. Trick number 3 is choose aura units only if you need them. For example, here we do have the Butcher aura, but we don't really have a perfect unit that fits with the Butcher aura. Not really a unit that needs lifesteal or spell vamp to be great. But why shouldn't you use an aura unit if you don't have the right units for it? This is simple. You pay a price for each unit. And usually, for example, let's say it is the Wanderer, you pay a price for the stats the unit has. But you pay a lot higher price for the stats of an aura unit because you also pay for the aura. So if you can't really properly use the aura, especially not with the units you will make benefit from later on, for example with the Butcher it would be a Phoenix, Doppelgangers, maybe Kingpins, LODs, just some high damage units that will profit a lot from the lifesteal and you will be able to keep alive for even longer. You won't really get this pay gap you pay for, but you don't really make the use out of it. Of course, I just describe it a lot more drastical than it actually is, but it is a step into the right direction to realize whether you need an aura unit and you get more value out of the unit than you pay for it, or if it doesn't happen. Also, be aware of different ranges. Different units have a different range. For example, we do have the Aqua Spirit here, which has a range of 400. While, for example, the Wanderer is a melee unit and doesn't have a range at all, or the Radiant Halo here has a range of 650. You will always see the range in-game as well by the circle around the unit. Those differences in the range of a unit will cause some issues or possibilities when you place them. This isn't the topic of this video, but you will get to know what units do with more range and what they do with a melee range just by training legions as said in point number 1. So get to know the units, you should understand where to place them, where to position them perfectly, and this is a lot of experience, so it will happen over time. But you should be aware of the fact that sometimes you don't have any melee units, for example, which is usually bad because there aren't ranged tanks. So get to know, is your unit ranged, is it not ranged, and why do I have to position it that way in order to solve my issues. So we have had a lot of points and topics discussed before we actually pick our role. Now let's get into it. What do we have to look at when picking the role? So I always tell the people, try to cover your first, maybe 10-12 waves with the role you select at the beginning. First of all, you want to find an opener, which is the unit or the combo of units you build on wave 1. This should always be a solid one. In the best case, you know how it performs to properly push in the early game. The earlier you push a worker, the better it will be for the game. In this case here, we have our tier 1 unit picked already and we choose the opener Aqua Spirit or later the Fire Elemental. This is a good opener for a lot of waves in the early game. But we will need a tank for 4, for example, or especially for 5. So we should choose the Wanderer here because it is a cheap tank we can use for this case. On top of this, Aqua Spirits are very strong 7 and 8 if you have proper value, but they're really bad on 9 and 10, and since the Wanderer's impact damage and fortified, it is a perfect answer for 9. Next on, we kind of have trouble on wave 10, because A, we lack tanks there, like proper tanks, which could be the Yasora, as well good for later waves, so let's pick the Yasora here for another tank. And obviously for the damage. Wave 10 requires a lot of single target damage, which is actually a perfect place for the Halo here. And what about some leftover units? So we can either just choose to have Sacred Steed, for example, which is kind of a good synergy with our Halo unit or with our Protons. We could as well just try to scale a little bit more into the late game with the Boar, or we can just leave a little bit more variety in our game with the Growl. So in this case, for example, we have 3 options and can decide whatever we want, whatever way we want to go. In my case now, I personally think having an Arcane unit, which solves the Arcane spot, plus the buff on the Proton and the buff on the Radiant Halo is the perfect choice here, so let's keep the Steed. So now we know, boom, how to pick our first set of 6 fighters. And now there's one special thing that all those 3 Mastermind options have in common as well. It is the reroll. The reroll is this button here on the right to your roll. As soon as you click it on any wave in the game, you will see the 6 fighters you've chosen plus 4 random fighters. Those 4 random fighters have no requirements at all, so they're for real 100% random. The only thing that can happen is if you're in wave 1 and use the reroll, there might be another tier 1 unit. After wave 1, you won't have the chance to reroll another tier 1 unit. When to use this reroll and what do we actually do with it? So once again, we see 10 fighters and we can choose any 6 of them. So we could just adapt, let's say like this, and just pick the roll. Boom. But when do we reroll? since I told you, you should always have a roll that is good for like the first 10-12 waves, the best is to reroll just towards the end of this limit you did set yourself. So you see, well, which units will I have to cover the next waves, how do I have to adapt, and so on. Another option is if you have some units you don't need plenty of. For example, Nightmare. Usually you build 2, in the late game sometimes a 3rd Nightmare or Doppelganger. So if you place 3 of them and you know, okay, I kind of need all the other units till the end of my game, but I don't need the Nightmare anymore, I can just try and find a better option to fit in for this spot. This is another option to use your reroll properly. And now let's head to the special abilities or the special things about each Mastermind option. As mentioned before, lock-in fighter is your default choice. You don't have to buy at the start. You will start with 3 income, which should be familiar for yourself since I told you to train out legions, and you're able to lock in 1 fighter. So that the set of 10 fighters you will see at the beginning will include 1 fighter you did pre-select with a lock-in fighter. So you can either choose a unit you really love to play, you can lock in a unit that is just broken at the moment and you want to abuse it, or you can just take the opener that fits you the best and you want to train, for example. So let's say you want to train a Nightmare opener, just pick a Nightmare and you will get to know comms, how to play Nightmare, which units you shouldn't play Nightmare, and you will learn the game a lot like this. So those are the options why you should and could pick lock-in fighter. Obviously, at the beginning, you don't have the essence to buy all Mastermind options usually. You might have to play it for some games and just lock in either the opener you like the best or you lock in the unit you like the most. There are cases you take a lock-in fighter and you don't take the unit you did lock in, but they're like 0.1%. which would only be if your comp otherwise is broken. But since this is a guide for beginners, we're not gonna address this point because it's super rare and you have to know all synergies, you have to exactly know how to scale in a game, which is a lot more advanced than you can imagine. The second option is the greed option, and it's the option of my choice currently. It is the option most high elo players play in ranked and tournament games because you don't have 3 starting income, but you have 5. This gives you the chance to build various of 5 worker openers. 5 worker opener is an opener which will allow you to have 5 workers on wave 3, or sometimes even before. Like usually you will have 5 workers either on 1 or on 2 already, but usually the first big send comes on 3. So you say you have 5 workers pre 3. Greed is perfect if you know 5 worker openers and if you know how to greed in the early game and scale your game up like this. Greed is great for scaling, but you don't have the guarantee you have in a lock-in, for example, for certain units or for a great comp, because you only get 10 random fighters with a small number of requirements. Greed is already the option I would recommend if you're a little bit more advanced and if you're not 100% of a beginner anymore. Last but not least, the redraw. It has as well as 3 starting income, but it comes with 2 additional rerolls. We've just talked about the reroll that you will be able to see the 6 fighters you selected and get another 4 fighters to them. And you can do this 3 times in total now. A redraw is very great if you either like to play a number of units the most and you just reroll and try to find them, or if you want to be flexible throughout the whole game. So you pick your roll, for example, let's say for the first 8 waves, then you take the reroll and try to cover waves 9 till 12. On 12 you reroll and try to cover waves 13 to 15. And on 15 you reroll the last time and try to cover the rest of the game. So it will leave you with a lot more flexible options. Obviously the rerolls have no requirements and they're totally random and you can just get units you really can't use, but usually you will find one or another unit to pick and you will benefit from. Those are the 3 options I would recommend to you. I've pointed out the positive and negative aspects and how to select your Mastermind role properly. I hope you learned a lot in this video because playing Mastermind is important for ranked and you will have a lot of fun choosing new comps, testing them out, and overall a lot of fun in Legion. So yeah, have a good time. Good luck in your first ranked games in Mastermind, and let me know how it works. Bye bye.